Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall here. Bear with me at home today. A little under the weather yesterday, you might have noticed that last week. So my voice might squeak a little bit in this small group video, but nonetheless, Colossians 3, the very end, and relationships. I open my message with a question, and as is typical, I ask you a question and I don't give you a chance to answer it. So this is your chance to answer it. When you think of unity, what do you think of? Where have you experienced the greatest unity in your life? And have any of you experienced the end of unity? What context and what was that like? In verse 15, 16, and 17, Paul gives three ingredients to a healthy Christian life. So the question is, as a group, make a list. What are they? How are you doing in each of these areas? Share with your group. And how is our church doing in each of these three areas? If there's one of these that you think our church is doing poorly in, spend a little time brainstorming how we could do better. Next, how do you think about singing in church? How does the insight in this passage about singing being a big part of the way that we teach, or maybe even the biggest way that we teach, help you think differently about the music at our church? As a group, spend a little bit of time discussing how to keep music from being divisive. In my church ministry, I've not ever experienced great division in music in my churches, but I certainly have heard about churches that have. How can we not make music divisive? How can we, as a church, never let music divide us? Talk about that a little bit. Now, the advice to husbands and wives in this particular passage seems so countercultural. It did to them as well. How would you explain this to someone as good news? Is there any way that this advice is good news? Now, Paul speaks to slaves and masters, which of course I told you really would be the way that we would think of employers and employees. He speaks to parents and children. Think about bad examples in each of these categories. In yourself, what are bad examples of work and employers, employees, parents, and children? What are some bad examples in others that you've seen? Share just a little bit. How might those stories that you've shared be different if they align themselves with Paul's teaching here in Colossians chapter 3? Finally, identify one personal relationship that you're struggling with at the moment. And then, what command in this passage on unity, there's a lot of them, what command do you need to apply to that relationship? How does Jesus being involved in all of these areas of our lives, how does that give you hope? And how does it inspire you? How does it give you an example? And then finally, let us always be reminded of our application this last week. Where do you need to work on unity the most? Do you need to work on unity at the church? Do you need to work on unity in your marriage? Do you need to work on unity in your family? Or is work where you need to work on unity? Well, I will work on getting my voice back and seeing you next weekend as we continue our trek through Colossians. God bless.